You're listening to the Minor Detail Podcast, a place where all things community, encouragement, and lifestyle come together through meaningful conversation. I'm your host, Khaila Ariel, and I'm so grateful that you chose to join me on this journey of authenticity to serve as a link that amplifies human connection in our everyday lives. Navigating life on a daily basis can be difficult, but I am confident that together we'll be our own answer to life's minor little details that come our way. Sit back and enjoy today's episode, purposely curated just for you.
Alrighty, guys. Hello and welcome to the Minor Detail Podcast. I am so excited to have you all here with me today. We have a very, very, very special guest, and I can't wait to just jump into her story, our story, little foreshadowing of what we're going to kind of talk about today. But I am very, very honored to be hosting our very own not Sevetri, but Sevetri Wilson on the Minor Detail Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. Yes, no, thank you. So just a little background so you guys can get to know her. Sevetri is the founder and CEO of tech startup Resilia, founded in 2016. So along with being the founder of Resilia, she's also authored 2 books to date, 2. Her latest book, Resilient: How to Overcome Anything and Build a $1 Million Business with or Without Capital. And previous book prior to that, so Solid Ground: How I Built a 7-Figure Company at 22 with zero capital, which spent 6 weeks at #1 on Amazon in the startup category. So that's beyond amazing. Just wanted to stop there. There's more, but I just wanted to give you your kudos because that really is amazing. Resilia is headquartered in New Orleans.
Thank you.
With the second office in New York. And then beyond that, she is an award-winning individual. So 2010 recipient of the Nobel Prize, for public service, the Jefferson Award, and her work was featured in the U.S. Senate report to the White House on volunteerism in the U.S. So your work has basically been everywhere. If people aren't familiar with you today, they will become familiar with you today and beyond. So again, I just wanted to thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this platform to allow me to tell your story and allow for you to tell your story, coming from you, your lived experience, your narrative. It's just super, super important for me. The Minor Detail platform serves as a link connecting the known and the unknown, and you are very much known or the known. So without further ado, I would love to get started. And briefly, honestly, I think one of the most important pieces of information for me, just as an individual being curious, is background. So where did you grow up? What was that experience like? How did that experience shape who you are today?
Yes. So I grew up in a very small town, probably about 45 minutes outside of New Orleans, called Hammond, Louisiana. My mother's from New Orleans, my dad's from Hammond. So I grew up basically being between those 2 cities and went off to, Hammond High, and only had one public high school in the whole city. So that tells you how small it was. And yeah, I grew up in a rural city before going off to college at LSU.
Well, that's awesome. Speaking of undergrad, I know it might be a loaded question, but can you briefly walk us through basically your experience from undergrad until now, however you kind of want to package that. But I'd love to know more from, just because of what we read from your bio, what we learned from your bio, knowing background information about you. I'm like, okay, how do we get from point A to point B?
Yeah. So, I came into undergrad wanting to be a psychologist. So I walk into undergrad thinking, oh, I'm going to be a child psychologist because I wanted to help juveniles, and particularly those who were in and out of, just in and out of the system itself. And so I obviously am not a child psychologist today. So a long way from where I started my undergrad career. And so I was on LSU's campus. So much I didn't know about just the world in general. And LSU definitely kind of opened just my preview to the possibilities, right, that existed. Particularly coming from a small rural city. And so got on LSU's campus, thinking I'd be a psychologist, and I enter the manship school. And I'm like, oh, wow. I started writing for the newspaper and got really into that, changed my major to mass comm, met a professor that had like a life-changing impact in my life in Dr. Leonard Moore, who's now over at UT. And he kind of, embedded in me this idea that if you do things that you're passionate about, you don't have to watch the clock. And so I started thinking about, oh, how can I build this world in which I'm doing things that I'm passionate about on a daily basis, and also, making a life, being able to make money and support myself. And from there, I began to get involved in different organizations. I pledged a sorority. I was, in Black Student Union. And so just super heavily involved.
All the things.
All the things, super heavily involved. I definitely was one of those students that had way more hours than I needed to take. Kind of like a little bit of an overachiever in many ways, but I had a lot of fun at LSU. I was also there during Katrina, so Hurricane Katrina, which that that was experience in itself. You hear me? And like this devastation, had like 15 people in our apartment living, and kind of lived through some of the racism that went down at LSU when I was there, right? And we were on the front line. Nobody's gonna tell us anything, and we weren't going back down either. And so I definitely had a full college experience.
Yeah, you did. Oh my gosh.
We won a national championship. I mean, a lot happened in those 4 years. Left LSU and went to grad school. Still kind of on this quest early on to be in academia. So wanted to be still like a college professor of sorts. Was majoring in graduate school in history. And then I started working at CASA, so Court Appointed Special Advocates. It's in the big nonprofit national office in DC. I was working out of the Louisiana office and doing stakeholder development, and then had an opportunity through a campaign at CASA called the Forgotten Children to advocate for foster children who were in and out of foster care. But we were starting a campaign that essentially was set out to get more Black male volunteers as CASA guardians. And so essentially the majority of the foster children inside of CASA were Black boys, but the majority of volunteers are white women. And so we started this campaign. And so I actively reached out to some of my former, classmates and friends who had now gone on to like play in the NBA, the NFL. And I was like, hey, I need to use your face for this campaign because you guys prepare for it. Right. And so the first person I reached out to was Tyrus Thomas, who then was in Chicago playing for the Bulls. And he and his mother to be kind of like the campaign faces. And they were like, oh, well, actually, we're trying to start a foundation where we can give back to kids over here, over in South Side of Chicago, as well as in South Baton Rouge, where he was from. And so I actually began to do consultancy work for what became the Tyrus Thomas Foundation. And that is what sprung me into starting my own company. So, that was the pathway to me starting my first company, Solid Ground Innovations. And the rest is kind of history. So I started there, began to get other clients, and I was kind of like the go-to in sports philanthropy for a minute. So I worked with the Warwick Dunns of the world, the Lolo Jones of the world, the Corey Websters, like the Glenn Davises. You were around. Was doing that, decided I wanted to work with larger entities, so like corporations working in public policy and government, and so kind of left sports philanthropy to do that type of work. So on a pathway to use technology to kind of, as I say, advance some of our services through software solutions. Saw that pathway, decided to launch a tech company. Now I've raised over $11 million for the tech company, and that's what I do 24/7. We have almost 40 employees on the team. We are always hiring. So we're hiring people. If you're a product marketer, growth marketer, we're always hiring.
I'll get those from you after the show and put it in the details of the show episode, and then they can go to the website. That's it. Look, resources already in the first 10 minutes.
So that was kind of my journey from undergrad to where I am now. But I always think about the foundation of LSU and like the network and exposure that I received during my undergrad years, and how I kind of like just continued that, like just rinse and repeating that blueprint of like meeting new people, learning new things, and trying to create a world designed through the things that I was passionate about.
No, that's really good. And one of the things that stood out the most about, just telling your story and that journey is leveraging relationships, because, you're in college and of course it's fun. You're just like getting by day to day almost, especially when you have all those things going on. I remember being in college, I'm just like, I'm trying to just see it to the next day, especially at the end. Like that's a whole other ball game. And so, using your wit as you were working on the project with Casa to be like, I know people who align with what I'm working on. What does that look like? What does leveraging in relationships look like? And I think for you to be, because I'm assuming you were young. How old were you when this happened?
Which part of it?
Like the first, I guess, opportunity with Casa.
Oh, so I was 20.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, like 20, 21. Yeah, 20. I started my company when I was 22. So yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel like that I commend you. That was so smart, because I think a lot of times we don't realize like how golden relationships are. And sometimes and that's the point I was getting to, is you find yourself in experiences where it's full circle almost. You're like, I met that person for a reason, or like I'm here for a reason. So I think that's really good.
For sure.
And the fact that you
be a
started,
problem solver. So
yeah,
that's the other thing.
exactly. Like, how can I bring solutions to the table? Very solution oriented. And the fact that you started SGI at 22, Solid Ground Innovations, I think that's crazy, because I did not know that when I met you, that you started that company at 22.
Yes, yes. I can't even remember how long ago that was, how many years ago. Callie used to always say, Sevetri, you act like you're 50. Like, she always like, you always act like you're older than what you are. Because I'm like, oh, Callie, one day you understand. She's Sevetri, you're not that much older than me.
I know. Shout out to Callie, y'all. Callie,
Yes.
you know what? I was gonna hold this for down the line, but I need to connect the dots for y'all listening. So when I was I think sophomore and junior year. So at the end of sophomore year and the beginning of junior year, I actually interned with Sevetri at SGI as like we'll call it a communications intern, because literally there was PR, there was like marketing, there was event planning. Because I remember for Sharon Weston Broom, who is now, holding all the titles and very successful, but back then was running for office. We were planning her event for her. I want to say maybe like it was something for her campaign.
Yeah.
But I just remember like seeing you and seeing Callie, and I'm like, look at these Black women in these spaces, in this super cute, like intimate but very nice office space with like a kitchen. I'm like, oh yeah. And then it's Baton Rouge. You don't expect that from Baton Rouge either. So for more background, but yes, that is technically how Sevetri and I came in contact, because I worked for her. So, fast forward to maybe 6 years later, here we are.
Yes, here we are.
It's super crazy, but it's intentional and it's leveraging relationships. You know what I mean? It's just another example. So I guess, you being 22 years old and bootstrapping a 7-figure company, what was that like? What was that experience like, starting out? I'm sure there were many lessons learned, which I would love for you to touch on, but that's a lot to come at you once at such a young age.
Yeah, I think, when you're young, you just take more risks too, right? And so I think that's the one thing about being young and in many ways naive. You're just like, you think the world is your oyster, and you just think that you could do anything, right? And I think sometimes experience and having like just negative things happen to you actually can like jade you and put you in like in a shell that you aren't in when you're younger, right? And so when I went out there, I was like, okay, I could do this. I'm gonna start a company, and I began to just go out and network, going back to getting to know people, and I rinse and repeat that cycle of, okay, I don't know anybody in the space, but I need to get work, I need to get contracts. Who can I reach out to? And so I started reaching out to just like my local officials, so like politicians, like city council member and the state rep. And I always tell people that these are people that you elected into office that represent your districts. And so you should be able to reach out to them and ask them things and meet with them. And so I did just that. And the thing about politicians is they know where everything is, right? So they know who all the players are, they know who all the business owners are, they know where the money is, because they're in the business of one, getting support, but also they have to fundraise, and so they know who the landscape. And so I would sit down and talk to these individuals, and they would tell me, "Oh, well, have you met this person? Have you met Joe Delpit, the first Black state rep who owns Chicken Shack, and they're doing almost $2 million a store? Can you probably can do some marketing for them? Or have you met Tony Clayton, who is an attorney? You could probably do some work for them." And so I began to reach out to those people and saying, this is what my offering is. Here are my services, and this is what I could do for your firm or your company, or in the instance of like foundations, for your foundation. And that's kind of how I began to like strategically build my business. And I, had super small contracts that I wouldn't even think about touching today, but I had to start somewhere. So I did.
Subtle flex, everyone.
But that's just the
nature of it. Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. And so, I would take these little small contracts and I would like perform, and they would introduce me to other people. And then my contracts started getting larger. And then I started going after more competitive contracts, like in government. And I started winning those contracts as well. And so like one of the contracts that kind of changed the trajectory of the company was that we had landed a contract with Aetna Better Health, and it was a multi-million-dollar contract to oversee their Medicaid program throughout the state.
I forgot about it. We sure did.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that contract really set us up to be able to take on other large contract opportunities. So we work with like Community Coffee and a bunch of others. But yeah, that allowed us to continue to grow and expand. And so we think about like the lessons that I learned. One thing about bootstrapping a company that's a lot different than having raised capital is that you have to stay like lean, and you have to like cash is king, right? So cash is always king. And so you're bringing in these contracts, but you have to service those contracts oftentimes ahead of getting paid, right? So you're having to like flow invoices and also pay subcontractors that you're hiring.
Right.
And so all of that mixed bag, growing a business, is something that I had to like learn in progress of actually doing. I often talk to my friend Cleveland Spears, we call each other accountability partners. He does like Dinner and Blanc here in New Orleans, and the Fried Chicken Fest, a whole bunch of different festivals, and probably is one of like the premier PR events firms in the city. We always align on the fact that it was like, oh, if you could have did something different, what would you have done? And we always say we probably would have went in and worked in another firm first to be able to
for
like
that experience.
Yes. But everybody want to be the boss and CEO. But I'm telling y'all, it ain't always the best thing. But we figured it out by a lot of, by just taking on a lot of fire, right? So we were able to successfully like rebound from a lot of mistakes, right, that we made. But a lot of businesses don't, right? A lot of people don't. So that's something we always say, we could have done something different. We would have went and worked for another firm and really understood the process of invoicing and ensuring that your subcontracts are correct, and ensuring that you have vendor credit and all these other things that we had to learn by doing.
For sure. And I think that's really good because in that process, like you don't think about what you don't know. Kind of like you mentioned earlier, you don't think about what you don't know, you just go for it. Yeah. And I think in your case, very successful move. And it proved to be worthwhile, but you do have to stay with it. Like you have to be able to roll with the punches and take the failures as lessons, because if you can recover, I think that's the difference between, giving up or excelling. Yeah. And I guess just to kind of dumb it down, because as we were speaking, I thought about it. So give us the definition of bootstrapping. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And so bootstrapping is essentially building a business with little to no resources, or just from the resources that you have. So that might be like your savings. It might be reinvesting money from like a check that you're getting from like your day job to try to do this thing on the side. But it's without infusion of capital, right? So that investment capital that generally people have if they're raising capital. like I did for my startup.
That's cool. I always get so interested in people that like wake up, not even wake up, because obviously you grew this knowledge, but whenever I hear venture capital, I get super like nervous, like what how do you even get there? So I also want you to briefly kind of talk about how did that start? Like how did you learn about venture capital, number one, because I think that is the first step, and then what made you say like, okay, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. So the thing about venture capital, why people raise capital versus bootstrap, which is a question I'm always asked, is that with bootstrapping SGI, it was easy to bootstrap because we could grow by contracts, right? So we get a contract, we know we need X amount of people to service it. With technology, building software is very expensive, and you actually have to build ahead of revenue even, right? And so that's why you hear all these tech startups were like, ah, man, Amazon didn't become profitable until like 10 years ago, right? But they were making hundreds of millions of dollars, but they weren't profitable because they needed to put in, like, inject capital to be able to grow rapidly so that they could cover more percentage of their market, right? So the market share. And so when I was building this spin-off product from SGI, at some point I was like, all right, I didn't invest enough of my own money in this company. I'm not gonna be able to sustain. I'm not gonna be able to continue to do it. And so I was like, if I'm going to actually see if this thing through, I'm going to have to go out and raise capital to build out this company because it's just too expensive to bootstrap. And so I began to do that locally. So I went out and raised $400,000 from essentially individuals I had met along the way, right? And so people I had done business with, people I had met through Chamber of Commerce, like these membership organizations. People generally we consider like high wealth individuals who have money to invest, whether that's like $10,000, $25,000, or $100,000. And so I raised $400,000 locally. Then from there, I needed to raise a seed round, which I raised $2 million from. Most of that money came outside of Louisiana because we just didn't have the capital here at the time to raise that. And then most recently, I raised a little over $8 million in a Series A, which that came from all across the U.S., investors across the U.S. And so, but it really kind of started because at some point you realize if you're building something that's scalable, that you're going to need some type of injection of capital. And the way you do that is by essentially, we formed a C corporation, Delaware corporation, and we're giving up a stake in the company, right? So SGI owned 100% of. With Resilia, we're giving up the stakes in the company for the capital that we need to grow the company.
Starting from the bottom. So when did you realize you were ready to bring on employees?
Yes. So my first employee was Shayla, who was also my line sister, right? And I actually have a rule that I don't really hire my friends for stuff, but Shayla was, you got some friends that are just different, right? Like, they work as hard as you. And so Shayla was that person because the thing about, we were in a sorority together, so I knew who she was at this
point. You knew you could trust her. You knew, exactly. Yep.
She was dependable. She would always show up. She would go the extra mile. She would stay late. She would come early. And I was like, Shayla, I'm starting this business. This is what I'm going to do. I've been doing this little stuff on the side. You want to come work for me? And she was like, sure, let's do it. And so she was just like a logistics whiz kid, right? So Shayla would figure it out. If it was something, she would figure it out. She would figure out how to get it done. And so Shayla was my first person that I brought on as an employee. And at some point, you only have so much bandwidth and capacity. And I had reached that capacity where, although there were opportunities coming to me, the quality of my service wasn't good, right? It wasn't good because I didn't have the capacity to deliver on it. So I'm working, you only got 24 hours in a day. You got to see at some point. And so in order to increase your capacity to service other people, at some point you're going to have to bring on other people. And so I was at that capacity limit where I needed to bring on someone else. And so I brought on Shayla. Then I brought on my assistant, Christine, and then started kind of growing out the team from there.
That's so nostalgic too, because I forgot about Shayla. And then you just mentioned her. I'm like, how could I forget about Shayla? Like, she was the best. So you're right. And I feel like that a lot of people struggle with defining that moment of bringing in help, whether it be like contract, freelance, full-time, part-time, especially in that space, because you want to be able to do it all on your own. And even when you don't know when the right time is or where to find the resources in the financial aspect of it, like you said, there's only 24 hours in a day. So you got to do what you got to do until now it's affecting, your business. It's affecting the type of clients that you're able to bring on. Because you can't get to Aetna Better Health and CC's Coffee without, those smaller contracts getting that together.
You won't even get the contract because they ask for your team. They ask for the team that's going to do the work, right?
Yeah,
so you gotta
exactly.
actually lay that out.
You're right. You're so right. So at this point, during SGI, do you think, looking back, because you kind of talked about lessons learned and if you would have done anything differently, but to kind of flip the script, do you think looking back, you would have known that you would be where you are now, like your current positioning? Did you have that clarity or that vision?
No, I don't think I had the clarity to be like, oh, I'm going to be in tech and I'm going to be running a venture-backed company. I think that I've always been led by opportunities, and I've never been afraid to walk through the next door, then the next door, then the next door. Mm-hmm. And so as I walked through those doors, new opportunities presented themselves where I saw a way to like, oh, here's this thing called technology. We really weren't in a tech ecosystem, right? Like Baton Rouge is not a tech ecosystem.
Nope.
And so it's not like we had examples, but when I started getting exposed to it, I said, oh, wow, this tech thing is like really happening. I was like one of the first people on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
LSU was one of the first schools to have Facebook as a state school. And I think about the evolution of tech, and I was like, oh, I have to be a part of this, right? Like I have to be a part of this disruption, and I want to use technology in this way. And so I don't think looking back then that I thought that this is where I would be, but I was always open to what my evolution would look like and what innovation in my space looked like and how I could be a part of that.
That's good. That's really good. I think innovation and being able to be a forward thinker essentially are key for sure. And just allowing yourself to pivot and be open-minded to like what could possibly come in the future. So even though you may not know exactly what is happening next, at least you have that idea, like whatever comes, I'm ready for it.
And you don't know who in the audience, right?
You don't know who is in the audience. Literally. Who would you say are some of your, I guess, favorite people that you consider peer mentors? Because I realize, and it could be a woman thing too. I always, get really specific when it comes to women because I'm like, I have the mind of a woman. And I definitely have a group of women where we're on the same page, we're on the same wave. We can shoot text to each other. If we're starting a new job that the other one has experienced it. Hey, how did you do this? Like, how did you present, this deck to a company or something? So who are some of your favorites?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I was just texting with my friend, Ashley Fox, who is out in Philly, New York. I hit up my friend, Abu, who like his whole online course thing is through the roof. He actually invited me to like this other group of like entrepreneurs, and we have a WhatsApp. And so constantly sharing information via WhatsApp, sharing like, hey, this is what I'm charging somebody. What do y'all think about this?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a little too low. You lowballing yourself. You need to do this and this. I can send you over my proposal that I use when I approached the company, very similar to that. And so I have definitely so many different spaces where I connect with women. I'm also part of like this Visible Figures group of a whole bunch of dynamic Black women here in New Orleans. I'm connected to a group called Crew to New. Shout out to Trivia Frazier and other women who are in that group. And so I have like my different groups that I'm part of, but also my close friends, right, that I communicate with, and we're like always texting or bouncing ideas off each other. So it's pretty vast. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I can relate. You have like different little pockets for different purposes almost. So that I can definitely relate to that. Obviously our work days are busy, so we can't just like text and talk all day long. But it almost like alleviates that pressure, that stress, knowing that you kind of have somebody to lean on that has experience in an area where you might need a little help. So I think that's awesome. How do you do it all? We talked a lot about SGI and introduced your current tech startup company, Resilia, which I know is off the charts and, definitely takes up a lot of time and your attention. So yeah, how do you balance it? If balance is real, I'm still not sure if I believe that balance is a real theory, but
I think it is what you make it, right?
Yes.
And so that's why it's important for you to curate a life that you're not trying to escape from. And
Mm.
so I don't like people like, oh man, I'm not gonna be the person that work day and night. Well, I like my work. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, I'm probably gonna work on a Saturday or a Sunday because I got work to
Yep.
do.
Yep.
And that just is what it is, right? So I'm not trying to, I need my breaks and my downtime, and I take off, I take PTO, all those things, to get away. But generally speaking, I'm not trying to escape from my work, right? And so I feel that it's all a combination of like what I do. So I can move from just getting off a sales call and jumping on this podcast with you, and then
Mm-hmm.
from here I can go, go work out, and so like I definitely just kind of think of all of it holistically, right? Like this is
Exactly.
my life, and this is how it's organized in a way that makes it doable, right? And there's you're always going through different periods of your life as well. So I won't always be running this fast, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I plan for that day too, right? So things I
Yeah.
put in place now, I'm planning for a day where I'm like, oh, I think I'll go do this today or go do that today. So I'm also planning for that life as well. And so, my fast paced life, I welcome and kind of accept it as this part of my journey.
Exactly. It's the season. It's temporary. I think that's it reminds me of when I was coming out of college. Senior year of college is when I got really heavy on listening to podcasts. And I remember listening to Myleik Teal,
Yes.
her podcast Might Taught You, and it was just like so groundbreaking for like that transition stage for me. And she talked a lot about how she spent her 20s and just going hard, enjoying life. Like of course she, partied and had fun, but also very, very, very serious about her work in knowing that this wouldn't be forever. And I think that is mindset is everything, and perspective is everything, and understanding that where you are now is just an opportunity to get you where you want to be next in the next level, and giving you space to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Oprah said something that I always kind of subscribe by. She said you can have everything, just not everything all at once.
Exactly.
And so I think about like what do I want for different periods of my life, right? And that's how I kind of envision my world.
Yeah, no, I love it. Kind of transitioning, I feel like another very, very important topic for this episode specifically is just elevating the voices of Black folks. Just I think with both of you and I being Black women, I know on your platform you share a lot about really wanting to kind of, I guess, lift others as you climb, as to be cliche. But I would like to hear from you specifically how you intentionally elevate or mobilize the Black community in the work that you do, just your day to day, personal life, whatever that looks like.
Yes. Oh man. I try to live it, right? I think
Yeah.
that when I saw this, oh, we about to buy black. I'm like, well, y'all just buying black. Like, what y'all been doing?
Y'all late to
Like,
the party.
what y'all been doing? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, I could post this, but I'm posting it for y'all, not me, because I've been
Mhm.
doing this. And so, but I really think about that, right? Like I think through how I move through the world and who I come in contact with, right? And what I come in contact with, who I buy from, where I buy from, everything from my handyman to my electrician, to my realtor. Like I think about these things, and I'm really intentional about ensuring that I'm working and using Black people, my vendors, my contractors. So I seek them out. I create lists of them when I can't. When I have an opportunity and I can't do it because it's something I don't do anymore, right? Somebody might ask me to do something that was related to something I would have done at SGI. That I'm like, oh, I don't even
Mhm.
do that anymore. I'll look
Mhm.
through my list of Black contractors and like, oh, well, who can I refer this work to instead? And so when I think about that side of things, is like my daily walk. And then I've been fortunate enough to start investing in other startups and other funds. And so, I have almost, I guess now like 15, 16 investments. And today, all of them are in Black fund managers and in Black startups. And so I'm very intentional about like where I put my money. I have my endowment at LSU, which
Mhm.
is targeted for students who came from places where I came from. I have an endowment at a scholarship at Southern University. So I'm super intentional about
Mhm.
how do we continue to create this legacy, and then how do I give back to my community, particularly the Black community, because it really does take a village, and I think it takes more of us we're becoming successful and we have to lift as we climb, and not so much like go all the way to the top and be like, all right, now who can I help? Yeah.
Right.
And we unfortunately, we gotta lift as we climb. We can't just go to the top and be like, let me help people now.
Right. Yeah.
We gotta help people along the way.
Exactly. And you never know when that time will be. And so rather than spending, your time perfecting your craft and being like, okay, now I'm ready, why not start, while the process is happening, which it's a task. I'm sure you know better than anyone, like that definitely is a task, but I feel like you said it best. Why wait? And why are we just buying black?
Exactly. Wait, what? Well, it's kind of one of those things. I'm happy that everyone is getting in line. I hope they stay in line and continue to ensure that our businesses, which are just as good, just as capable, better, can get the support that they deserve and need.
For sure. So do you, or I guess the better question really is, so your book, Resilient, How to Overcome Anything and Build a $1 Million Business with or without capital, which the entire title is very important. That's the selling point right there. What do you feel like was the motivation behind putting pen to paper? Was it things like, wanting to mobilize the Black community, or was it just knowing like there are many entrepreneurs behind you in general that could really use these resources?
Yeah, definitely. Probably more of the latter, just because I would get like DMs, messages, asking me these different questions, and so I wanted to kind of create a easy to read kind of how to guide, how I did it, but then also talk about just like my journey, which was very difficult in like raising capital and building businesses. And as I tell people, like, hey, if I can do it, being a Black woman from the South with so little exposure, growing up, then you certainly can do it. And yeah, that feeling you're feeling is common amongst entrepreneurs and business owners. And you have to continue to like push through and have that resiliency about you to keep getting back up when you continuously get knocked down. And that's kind of what I mean by like overcome anything, right? People like overcome anything, really. Can you really overcome anything? And it really is. It's like, yeah, you might fail, right? Because failure is a part of it. But if you can get back up, right, and get back on your feet and continue to move forward, continue to move the needle and trying to rebound, then yeah, you can't overcome anything, even failure.
Yeah. And applying that same mindset to different situations. I think that's the caveat for anything. It's like, it's all, again, mindset, perspective, and like you said earlier, rinse and repeat. Applying what you've kind of owned and become really skilled at in one area to the next. It doesn't necessarily have to be about work or career life. Sometimes that same mindset can apply in personal life. So I totally agree with you there. Would you say that you have any expectations for what you want the book to have on, those that read it, or entrepreneurs that really put it to work?
Yes. So I definitely, I include everything, and even like links back to my website, from like my pitch deck to like my security agreement for future equity. So like the actual document I use to raise capital. And so entrepreneurs who are looking to raise capital are not, right, just bootstrap. It really is very practical, and you can literally download the information and documents and use it. And I've had entrepreneurs reach out to me and said, hey, I used your price sheet from your website, and the price that we were thinking about doing, we just used your price sheet, which broke down the different numbers of what we should be charging. And we ended up getting an $8,500 contract when we actually went into the meeting. I think we were going to ask for $3,500.
Wow.
So we definitely have had a lot of entrepreneurs already reach out and say that they found, the documents in the book to be like super helpful and useful in their own journey.
For sure. And have you started any like exclusive groups of your own or anything like that? Like, I don't know, like maybe a Facebook page or anything where people can like get connected specifically to you in a more intimate space?
So I did start a Facebook group. I plan to actually activate it in August. So find it on Facebook. It's called Solid Ground, from Solid Ground to Resilient. And so you're going to go on and you're like, wait, where's all the stuff? But it's coming August, so go find us.
Good. We'll be sure to plug that in. We have so many resources. We have job openings. We have your website with the resources that people can download, and we got a Facebook group. So those are good. You won't leave this podcast feeling like you don't know next steps. That's all I'm gonna say. So I have a fun, interesting question for you, just because sitting here, I'm just excited and curious. What would you say is your favorite part of your life that you've created for yourself right now?
Right now, I'm really enjoying. I just bought a house in September. I had my condo, and then with COVID and everything, I was like, this is not designed for me to live and work out.
Yeah.
And so I was supposed to be in New York as well. I had just opened an office in New York, and I had an apartment in Harlem. So I came back to New Orleans to weather through COVID, started looking around, ended up buying a house. And so I really enjoy now starting back, like hosting my friends at my home and doing little things from like crawfish boils to barbecues and stuff like that. So that's what I'm enjoying right now.
And I love what you're doing for the city of New Orleans too. I think you're a very, very key stakeholder to putting the city on the map. So just wanted to commend you, because I remember being in college and loving New Orleans, but feeling like there were no opportunities that fit my niche. You know what I mean? Like I went to school. I also went to school, management school, mass communication as well at LSU. And that's a really great curriculum. Like that's a really great college to come out of. And so it's super competitive. When you come out, you have this expectation. You look in New Orleans and it's like, it just doesn't fit. Like it just doesn't make sense. I came and I got this education, and I don't want to, not like you're putting yourself behind, but the opportunities just aren't there. And I think that that's another key element to, you know, elevating and mobilizing community, is bringing opportunities back to that space. And so I thank you, number one, because I know there's so many individuals that'll be able to come behind us and make that, you know, because it's home for a lot of people who go to LSU, number one. So
100%.
Exactly. And so not force them to feel like they have to leave home and call somewhere else home because there are no opportunities. And so, thank you.
And we hear often from LSU students, from Tulane, from Loyola, so many students, when they graduate, they want to stay. They want to stay in New Orleans. And same thing that you're saying, that they're saying too, like, oh, where are the opportunities for me to do so? And so when companies like ours begin to see success, we can't leave New Orleans, right? For other cities, we have to stay here and create the ecosystem. So then those students and others can stay and do jobs that they had dreamed of, right in the cities that they want to be in.
So is there anything that we can expect to see from you in the upcoming, months, like new projects you're currently working on, that you're comfortable with, telling us about, giving us a sneak peek a little early?
Yeah. Two things. If you're an entrepreneur, definitely sign up for my newsletter, SevetriWilson.com. I'm doing something where it's like a kind of like a masterclass with a company called Grow You, which is a Black-owned company. And they're doing essentially masterclasses from people of color. And so I'm signed up to do one with them, a group of friends of mine. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do one with you. So that should be a pretty cool thing that we'll announce soon. And then if you're in the nonprofit space, definitely sign up for the newsletter at Resilia.com, because we'll be rolling out some new products soon. So yeah,
that's exciting. That's exciting. I love that. Where are most of your employees at Resilia? Are they local? Are they remote?
So everyone technically is either in New Orleans, our New Orleans office, or our New York office. We have a couple people who are in, some sales people who are in California. I have one person in Atlanta, one person in DC. But for the most part, everyone is either in the New York office or the New Orleans office. So when we open up the offices, they'll return to one of those offices.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to know, or I want the people to know, where they can find you. Where are you on social? Where are you in the digital stratosphere, so that we can connect, follow, stalk, hype you up? Because by the way, y'all, I didn't mention she is also like model influencer vibe as well. Photos. She's not giving tech. She's not just giving tech. Okay, I don't want y'all to watch this podcast, see her headphones, and hear startup, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, no, the tech, Black women in tech these days are bringing the energy we need.
Yeah, we're definitely taking advantage of the opportunities in front of us. But yeah, if you look at my Instagram page, you're like, I said I'm gonna do a better job of talking about like my actual tech, my business stuff. But the truth is, I'm an enterprise software, y'all. Like my customers aren't in on my Instagram page, like checking for me. They really not. They're not. Like
It gives you some flexibility too. Like it allows you to have like a personality and not feel like you have to hide, you know?
Yeah. That's like my Instagram and social media can like for the most part it can be like more personable, I feel, than being like me pushing out business stuff. But I try to do that from a standpoint of like, oh, how I can help people versus like selling to them. So you really won't see me like selling something on social media, like talking about it because of that. But yeah, you can follow me on, like I said, sign up for my newsletter on SevetriWilson.com, my website, same name across all my social media. So at Sevetri Wilson on Instagram, on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, I think.
Are you a Clubhouse girl? Are you still using Clubhouse?
I am on Clubhouse, but I'm not gonna lie. I don't be using it anymore, y'all.
Yeah.
Follow the Black Founders Club though, because I'll pop on there and do some things.
Yeah, Clubhouse is on its way. It's on its way. It's like fluctuating. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah,
it's like
the outside open, right? And so on Instagram, you could be walking or you could be at brunch and quickly look at Instagram. You can't really do that on Clubhouse. You gotta the audio, right? Like you can't just be sitting there and listening to audio. You got to sit down for at least 30 minutes to really understand what's happening in a conversation and gain something from it. Whereas like Instagram, Facebook is the visual, you can read it. So I think like that's where it's kind of like fluctuating. Not that people don't want to be on, but it's just like
when more commitment.
Like when do I have time to be on? It's harder to do in transit.
That's so real. I never thought about it like that. I wonder if I'm sure that they thought about that in their marketing strategy, but I'm curious to know now, like, how are they going to address? Because it's like podcasting, but it's real time. So it's not evergreen. So you can't go back to it.
That's what I think they're gonna start. I think they're gonna start making some of the conversations evergreen where you can listen back to it. Because there are so many times where I was like, dang, I wish I could have caught that one, right? So I think some of it, I think maybe in the future they'll try to make some of it evergreen where you can listen back to certain ones.
We'll see. Because if your predictions are right, then I think that says a lot about your just your tech foreshadowing and just your knowledge in general.
That's what I would do at least, because I would come back on the platform if I can go listen to Kat Cole, something that she did around, DTC or something. So
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being here. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think others will too. There's so many moments, so many gems. Like I said, you guys, the details will be full of the resources that we mentioned, because I want to make sure I can get that over to y'all. Savitra, have an amazing rest of your day. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy woman, from taking time. It sounds like you got some things to do. You may have mentioned working out, whatever. Just enjoy your evening. Continue the work that you're doing. We are watching, we're supporting, and we love that. We love that for you, and we love it for us. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.